Today is September the 2nd, 1990.
Okay. About this time you were transferred, oddly enough, to Salt Lake City. Describe the new house that you purchased up there.
I was transferred in about April, but we didn't move to Salt Lake City until about June when the kids got out of school. But before moving, Lola came up to Salt Lake City and we looked around for a home to buy. And we decided to buy one in an exclusive area called Shadow Mountain Estates. And it was really a beautiful house. And they wanted $47,500, which in that day was an astronomical figure. But I remember we got it for $41,500. But in buying it, you had to put a lot of money down. It wasn't like it is today where you could pay 10% down or something like that, but they wanted $17,000 down. So I remember I gave them $7,000 that I had, and I got a loan from the bank, and they gave me a loan on my signature with the understanding that I paid it back to them when I sold my house in Walnut Creek. And when I did sell the house in Walnut Creek, I gave them the $10,000, which worked out real good. And selling that house in Walnut Creek, it was quite a deal. I left early, about April, and we tried from April until June to sell the house through real estate people, and they didn't have any luck. So I went home about a week before we were to move, and I put signs out and advertised it, and I sold it that week. Sold it myself. I had a company there that handles real estate deals. They took care of it for me anyway.
We had to landscape the yard. You described how we did that, especially the backyard.
Yeah, the house, when it was built, they cut right into the side of a hill. So the house was set down into the hill. So we had quite a hill at the backyard. And around this hill, we built retaining walls out of rocks. And we gathered these rocks up from just the area around the Shadow Mountain Estates. And there was a lot of open area. We gathered up the rocks all around there, and hauled them over to the house and rolled them down this back hill and built the retaining walls clear around the back. And I never did count them, but I estimate there was around 500 of them. But we hauled these, maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, but there was a lot of rocks there. And we hauled those rocks in an old Plymouth car that we had that Larry nicknamed the Tank. But it was really a sturdy old car. It wouldn't go very fast, but it was a good car. We built those retaining walls, and then after we got that done, we planted lawns, and it wasn't long till we had a real nice, well, you might say a beautiful yard. Then Lola took over the inside of the house, and we had new carpets. She bought some new furniture, and the inside was beautiful. It was really a beautiful place when we got through with it.
There were a lot of animals around there at that time.
Oh, yeah. Well, we were kind of out in the wilderness. This Shadow Mountain Estates, of course, there were houses within the estate. But there was a group, as Larry says, we used to wake up every morning and there'd be a bunch of these guinea hens, and they were a large hen, almost as big as a turkey, going around there, and they were kind of mean. You'd have to Be a little bit careful or they'd whack you one. But we had those, and we had a lot of quail. That's just to show you how out in the wilderness it was. We had a lot of quail running around there. They were real cute.
Yeah, a woodpecker too.
Oh yeah, woodpecker. This woodpecker attacked our house up high on the side and cut a hole right through the house. He got into the attic, and he was floundering around in this attic and fell down in between one of the walls. And we couldn't get him out. He was down in there, and he died, and we had to smell him for quite a while.
Let's see, Mom became ill again.
Oh yeah,
right?
she had quite a lot of troubles, but and I think this is a continuation of the illness that she had back when we lived in Inglewood. But anyway, she became real ill here, and we had a couple of minor operations. Female operations, and they found nothing. So her illness continued on. So finally, they decided to have an exploratory. And when they opened her up, they found a big cancer hooked onto her female organs. And after the operation was over, I talked to the doctor, and he said that she was terminal, that there's no way she could live with that. He said, I don't know how long she'll live, but it won't be very long.
She lived how long after that?
Well, she fooled them all. She,
Over 30 years after that.
yeah, that was in 1962, almost 30 years. But she fooled them, and we kind of changed our way of living. We began to travel a lot, or not a lot, but we began to travel. I remember we made a trip. We made a trip to, first of all, I had to go to New York to a meeting. And from New York, we traveled all around New York, went south to Washington, D.C., into Virginia to see Washington's home, and back, and we went up to Gettysburg to see where the big the Battle of Gettysburg was. Then we went back to New York and traveled north from New York to West Point. And after seeing West Point, we went further on, and we went up to Hyde Park and saw where Roosevelt's home was. And then we traveled on home. So that was really a nice trip. Then, soon after that, we went on a trip to Hawaii. And we went with Milton, my brother, and his wife. And we have slides of this trip, and it was really a nice trip. Also, not too long after this, we went on a short trip. We spent probably 4 or 5 days at it, but we left Salt Lake City and traveled to Mesa Verde Park, and then down through Navajo country to the Grand Canyon, and then back to Glen Canyon Dam that was just being built at that time, then back home. But we really had a nice trip. And later on, I recommended this trip to Linda and Kent. And this is about 1989 they made this trip, and they really enjoyed it. They included in this trip Lake Powell that we didn't see on that trip, but we did see later.
You started having some trouble with some of your New York executives, and that led to some trouble at Kress's. You want to describe the problems you had at Kress's and how that turned out?
Yeah, we remodeled the store. This was in 1962. We remodeled the store. The store before it was remodeled was old and really dilapidated. When it rained, we'd have to have pans sitting around on the counters to catch the water. And it was really a dilapidated store. So during that year, from about April until August, we remodeled. Well, we remodeled the store, and after the store was ready to open, we had some visitors there from New York. And it was at this time that Lola was in the hospital for this operation that I was just telling you about. And they tried to get me to take a leave of absence, but I knew what they wanted. They wanted the store for one of their buddies, because it was a beautiful store after it was remodeled. But I refused, and it was hard because Lola was very ill in the hospital. But anyway, I stuck it out, and the opening was a tremendous success. And these guys had to pull in their horns and shut their mouth. And along about January, the one man came back of the two that was giving me trouble. And he said that the store was doing well, and he says, I know we were giving you trouble at the opening, but he says, I want you to know that we're here to help you. Later on, this is in July, as I came back from my vacation, the district man came in the store one morning, and he says, well, we're bringing somebody else in to run the store. And they gave me no reason. They just checked me out. And later on, I wrote to the president and asked him why, if they didn't want me in that store, why didn't they at least offer me another store? And the answer came back was, we didn't have one available at that time. After 30 years with them, I was dumped about 2 months before they would have to have given me quite a chunk of money in my retirement program.
I know that after you left Kress's, you were pretty depressed, but eventually things worked out fairly well. You got a job with Newberry's, and eventually you had a chance to run a very nice department store. You want to tell us a little bit about that and how that worked out?
Yes, Lola and I went to Los Angeles, and we went to the Newberry headquarters, and I ran into a guy that was a manager of Newberry's in Pocatello. And I knew him, and he was a buyer in Newberry headquarters. And he was instrumental in getting me a job. Before I left there that day, they offered me a job as assistant manager in a new department store that they were opening up at that location. This was the department store was called Britt's. And I worked there in that store for, I started in August. And I remember I started out at $8,000 a year. And after a couple of months, I was raised to $10,000 a year. And I received several job offers. I was offered a job in near San Bernardino, and I was offered a job of running a store in Phoenix. I turned those down, but one day in March, the owner of the Paris department store in Salt Lake City came by and offered me to be the manager of a new store that they were opening up in the Cottonwood Mall in Salt Lake City. And I wasn't offered any more money than I was getting, but the opportunity to go back to Salt Lake City and live in that house up there that I really liked. And also Linda was up there and she could be back with us again. So I took them up on this offer and went back to Salt Lake City, but I wasn't there very long till I could tell that that was a big mistake that I'd made. I didn't like the way they operated, and after 2 or 3 months I asked Britt if I could come back, and they offered me a job back, which I really don't understand why they did, but they did. And I worked there I went back in August again, and I worked for about a year and a half under 2 different managers. And in February of 1966, they offered me the job as manager. And I was successful there. And the store, the year before I took it over, lost over $1 million. And the following year that I was managing it, we wiped that loss completely out and made a little bit of money. So I was very successful there. The store was a 2-floor store with an escalator, had a beautiful cafeteria. It was really a nice store, one that you could be proud of. I was really in the limelight, though, because our West Coast offices were upstairs. So I had to really keep things in ship shape.
Now, Linda, of course, had gotten married. Maybe you better describe a little bit about that, when that happened.
Yeah, in 1965, Linda married Kent Clark. And Lola and I went up there. I remember Lola went up early, and she went up and sewed for Linda, and she made dresses, all the dresses for the wedding. But anyway, Linda was married in the temple there, and she had a breakfast in Hotel Utah. It was very nice. And then she went on her honeymoon to Los Angeles.
How about your grandkids? How many grandkids do you have?
Well, of course, it took a couple of years, but we now have, and this is 1990, we have 6 grandchildren. Let's see, we have one that's 23 and 2 that's around 22, and one 17, and one about 14, and one 10. So they're kind of getting grown up, but we sure enjoy them. Lola especially enjoyed them.
Maybe you better describe a little bit about when you retired from working altogether.
Oh, in 1976, I retired, and I'll never forget that day, because all my life I'd worked such long hours and worked so hard. And when I went home that night, the last night, it just didn't seem possible that I didn't have to work so hard anymore. And Lola and I have really enjoyed our retirement. We've gone a lot of places. It was not long after we retired that we went to Europe with Larry and Phyllis and Bradley. And we really had a nice trip. We traveled from England to Greece to Italy to Austria, Switzerland, Germany, Holland, Belgium, France, and then home. This was about 23 days, and we had a marvelous time.
You went over there once again quite a bit later with Orville and Melville.
Yes, this was about 1985, I think, around there.
That was just to England and Ireland, though, this
England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales in '85. But this, when we retired, was just England, and then we went to Greece and all over the European continent.
One of your main activities when you retired, and to this day, is to work in your garage with some very special tools you have. You want to describe that?
Yeah, Lola worked a lot with me in that she'd design furniture and then I'd build it and she would kind of take over the finishing of it. But we built a lot of things, and we built them for our kids. We built
grandkids too.
Yeah, grandkids, yeah. But we built a lot of different things.
Do you name a few?
Well, yes, we built, 1, 2, 3 secretary desks. We built 2 lowboys. We built 2 grandfather clocks, and we built a total of 5 clocks. And a lot of things. Display cases, bookcases.
You've also done a lot of building inside of both our houses too, like
Yeah.
bookcases. You want to describe the dimensions of some of those?
Well, in Larry's house, we built 2 bookcases that are about 135 inches long and to the ceiling, which is 8 feet. They're quite some bookcases, and one is a bookcase, one is we call a wall unit. In Linda's house, we built one about the same size, about 135 by 8.
Put in a stair railing?
Oh, we put in Larry's house, we put in stair railings and a lot of display cases, projection room, a couple of speaker boxes.
And Linda's, you built some rooms in her basement?
Linda, yes. In Linda's basement, we built two rooms for the boys down the basement. And we built those in about 3 weeks. And this, when I look back on it, we accomplished a lot in those 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's really good. So besides doing woodwork, you spend your time traveling to Utah and back. You spent about how many trips a year to Utah did you make?
Well, we made 3 or 4.
3 or 4.
Well, we'd alternate Christmas. We'd spend one Christmas with Linda and one Christmas with Larry. And we did quite a lot of traveling too. We made a Caribbean cruise, which we visited Mexico and Cayman Islands and Jamaica and the Berry Islands. And we came back and traveled in southern Florida, and we saw the Keys and the Everglades. And then we traveled to Louisiana, and with Orville and Melba, we traveled all over the South and up the East Coast, clear up as high as Lancaster in Pennsylvania. And Lancaster was the Amish country. But we traveled there, and then we went west as far as Illinois, and then south down to New Orleans again. It was quite a trip. We really enjoyed it.
So do you have any words of summary here for your interview, Dad, that you'd like to say before we end the interview?
Well, I've enjoyed my retirement very much, and I enjoyed working and doing things for my kids. And I don't miss working, but I enjoy reflecting back over my life of working. My kids, which are not kids anymore. Larry is he's over 50, and Linda's about 48. They've been very good to us. They've been successful, and we've really had a nice family relationship. I've enjoyed, especially Phyllis and Kent. They've really fit right into our family life, and we've enjoyed them just as much as we have our own kids. And our grandchildren have been something super. We couldn't ask for better. And I guess that sums it up.
That's another
Said that this is 1990.